Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 8th American Mussar Community Gathering Cycle, or the 8th Mussar Cycle for the American Mussar community. I don't know, something like that. And this one's going to be special, where we are going to be taking a focus on the soul trait of Chesed the whole time, which I have been translated in my book and in our groups as loving kindness, but for reasons that I was explaining in my email, it doesn't really translate that well from Hebrew. It's a very complicated term. And it's something that we'll kind of be exploring in depth today and next week. And then each week, as we come to a new soul trait, we will kind of look at it through a Chesed lens. So it's a bit of an experiment, but it's something I'm kind of excited about. We'll get started the way that we always do with a short meditation. So I invite you to relax in your seat and close your eyes and take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling through the nose and holding, and exhaling through the mouth and holding. If thoughts should come into your mind, just observe them and let them go. Like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema, listen. Shema, listen. In Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we're listening with an open heart.
Hasta mañana.
Ok, hasta
Hasta
mañana.
mañana a las 8.
Gracias.
Gracias.
Good night. Hasta la vista. Hasta la vista.
And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Okay, this is not what I'm looking for. There we go. So to begin with, we'll start with a definition of chesed, and then we will discuss that a little bit, and then we'll get into some more logistical details. But I always like to just jump in and get going. So this will be kind of our opening question for today. May I have someone unmute, please, and read this out loud?
Chesed is going above and beyond to support someone else without asking or expecting anything in return.
Great, thank you, Marianne, and welcome. Nice to see you. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share, and I will also paste this in the chat. And then I'd love to kind of get your reactions. Like, what does this bring up for you? How does this apply in your life? Is this kind of a new idea or something you're familiar with? This will be kind of our baseline. Yes, Wendy.
I have a question. Um, I wonder about not asking. I mean, at least sometimes. Um, Sometimes I've got myself into trouble just marching right in there and helping.
Yeah.
So I guess you have to have I don't know, carefulness. I don't know what the word would be.
Right. So I guess what I'm hearing is it's not like this is the only thing in the world. And sometimes if you just show up and start helping, it might not be welcome. It might not be helpful. It might mean well. You might not kind of be interested. Is that kind of, am I kind of getting your point correctly?
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. Thank you. Bonnie.
This is a small piece, but it works for me, which is um, try normally not to be running to a meeting or running to an appointment. So if I'm on one of the freeways or in a street and somebody clearly needs to enter, I, I don't ask, I just will stop.
Mm.
Or I will, allow them to merge on. And it's become
Mhm.
a really good habit for me.
Mhm.
Um, and it has slowed down I don't scream at bad drivers. I just have a conversation with them like they could even hear me, which of course they don't.
Mm.
But it starts usually with you idiot. Um, and I don't, it's like, where did you learn to drive? But doing this by just allowing them to enter or merge or change lanes or whatever has really helped me cut out the you idiot discussion that goes on, not just in my head, out loud.
Mm. Driving is like such fertile ground for Mussar practice, I think. I've heard so many stories. And yeah, it's beautiful just kind of opening up and okay, I'm just going to let you go ahead. I don't need to always be first. And, yeah, I'll just let you go. Thank you. I see Wendy again. But does anyone else want to say anything
I just wanted
first?
to thank Bonnie
Oh,
putting that word habit in there. I love that. I wrote that down. Make Chesed a habit.
mm. Awesome. Hey, Joanne.
Hi. So, yeah, I am not driving currently, because I don't have a car currently. So, but when I was driving, if I cursed at the driver, then they didn't hear me usually. But then I'd say, sorry, Hashem, like I didn't mean, you know. But the main thing I do, and I like when other people do for me, is if they'll hold the door, or hold the door, you see somebody's coming, or I'm at the elevator, are you going up?
Mhm.
And the opposite, and of course, the same thing with drivers, is not letting somebody in, kind of slamming the door, like not asking and just going on because their time is so important. Anyway, so I try with my neighbors, especially, to be mindful. And
Mhm.
I have this incredible neighbor who, if I ask her and she has time, she will take me anywhere. And if we make a time and I'm running late, she will wait patiently. She's like a saint,
Mm.
really, you know. And so I try to reciprocate as best I can, though she doesn't really. Well, I picked up some bananas for her a couple of times, that's about it. And I give her like portions of stuff that I make,
Mhm.
and she does the same for me. She makes an awesome ginger beer. Okay,
Ooh.
yeah.
Wow, that sounds good.
I'm
Well, it sounds like she's someone who's giving a lot of hesed towards you and really going above and beyond to drive you around. And um, it doesn't sound like she's expecting anything back, but you like to try to do things for her as well. Hey, Paul.
Hi, everybody. I'm glad to be here. In my Mussar practice, I've found that Chesed really means seeing the other and bearing their burden. And sometimes we don't know their burden, but the traffic analogy is a very good example. Somebody cuts you off, or does an abrupt move, and it angered me. And then I began to think, what is their burden? Have they lost their job? Did they discover their child has a terrible disease? Are they getting divorced? We can't possibly know. But we know that they're human and that they, like me, suffer. And we need to have chesed, compassion, whatever you want to say, toward their particular form of suffering.
Thank you, Paul. And that's such a great addition. Part of what I'm hoping that we can do in this next unit is to kind of expand our understanding of chesed beyond, the simple translation of love and kindness, and compassion is absolutely an element of that. So thank you. I see Frank, and also think I saw Paul's hand as well.
So I was reflecting that um, I try to be careful about certain things. So I ride my bicycle, and I hate frightening people if I'm if I'm on the path with them. So I literally usually stop and I let them pass
Hmm.
and walking. So I do different things like that. And to me, that is good. And I like of course, the car analogy, because we don't know why they're crazy drivers. And maybe we're seen also as crazy drivers sometimes by others. So, but the other thing is, I realize that when we are outward oriented, that sometimes the things that at home don't get done. And I realized I went to someplace where how am I a good partner to make sure that we have the things that we want in our lives. And I'm thinking about a couch. We've been wanting to buy a couch for some years. and so it's I think that sometimes it's easier to do chesed for others than for ourselves.
Yeah.
And so knowing that balance of taking care of oneself, of one's family, but then when we can be free to like me be on a bicycle, or any other time, the idea is to be mindful.
Thank you. Thank you, Frank. So we hear from Paul, and then we'll move on.
There's a new interface, and I've been having some trouble just figuring some stuff out. There are banners that come up, stuff like that. But anyway, good to be here. Glad to be seeing everybody. I think, when I see that, I think so just very personally, my impulse based on the way that I was raised and how I responded to a chaotic upbringing was to always try and be a helpful person, being helpful. And it, as an adult, that had gotten me into trouble in the sense that sometimes I try to help somebody and they don't really want to be helped. And I'm not really being very sensitive to what they really need to do. And for instance, with close ones, I have had to train myself, and I'm doing it more often now, to say, is there anything I can do to help, to be happy to be available, but to make sure that it's something that is desired. Now, this is if there's some sort of an interpersonal relationship, or if they are doing something and if I want to help them with that, whatever it is. And that's different from knowing that somebody needs Recently we had a death in the family, so we were offering up meals. So we signed up for meals, stuff like that. So if you know somebody is grieving and you can do something, then certainly cooking a meal and not looking for any thank you, in response, just knowing that that is something that is will help that person with their process. That's kind of how I'm seeing how this makes sense in an easier way. And I think that to Frank's point, that there is a spectrum of kind of how we take care of ourselves, because I would leap into the breach as I thought it was there, and I wouldn't take care of me. And I think I was doing the right thing, but afterwards I would be unhappy, depressed, resentful, whatever it might be if I put myself out too much, especially if the person didn't actually need it, So knowing that I'm doing what I need in loving kindness to take care of myself in the moment, as well as what I can do to take care of my community, I suppose, or my environment, my people. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, thank you so much, Paul. And you said a lot of good stuff. And one word that really stood out for me was sensitivity, and sensitivity towards the self and sensitivity towards others. And if we're not sort of, and many of you alluded to kind of similar sentiments, which really, there's an awareness. We work on our internal awareness, we work on our internal world, and we're working on our internal world for the sake of being able to sense the needs of the people around us. Okay, so let's go a little further, and having had a little taste of conversation, I wanted to go through a couple of logistical things. So the first is, what does it, let's remind ourselves of a Mussar practice. There's, 3 parts. There's a morning mantra, a recitation phrase to frame the day. There's acting, which I think is the most important part of the practice, picking one small thing that we can do to move towards balance. And then there's the final part, which is journaling. Where was our soul trait tested? Many people do not journal, or do not journal regularly, or if they journal, it might be gratitude journaling or just general journaling. But the point of this is reflection. Like, journaling is a great way to reflect. And even if we don't journal, I think it is important to kind of notice and reflect, again, with this idea of sensitivity, that we want to know and see what's going on. And we need to be able to recognize when we've made a mistake, and to do that without shame spiraling or getting into major recriminations. And we also want to notice when we're doing something well, and we want to be able to do that without getting a swelled head. And noticing when we do something well can actually be even harder than noticing. We always notice our mistakes. I could tell you mistakes I made 50 years ago when I was 5 years old, probably. But the thing that I did well when I was 5, I'm not sure. That can be a little bit harder. So that's kind of the one reminder for all of us. And I think many of us have been practicing Mussar for a while. So I think in this cycle, a few questions come up, like what might it mean for a mantra when we're kind of focusing on Chesed and humility? Let's see, I'm going to move on to this. So, for a Chesed-focused Mussar cycle, we'll start with Chesed, as I said. We generally go 2 weeks, but I think this time around I might be more, and occasionally we'll roll over into a 3rd week. I suspect we might do that even more, because this is new ground, and if it feels like we want to have some more time on a given soul trait, we'll just we'll just take that and and you know, when we're done with Chesed, we'll go back to humility and go back to the kind of regular, quote, regular order. But at least part of the time, we'll be looking for those connections. We know that the different soul traits all connect with one another. And so this is going to be, you know, this will be an experiment. We also may spend some more time co-creating, like picking actions or writing mantras, you know, in our breakout group. And I just want to be transparent. I really, as some of you know, I did my thesis on the Chesed voice in Jewish texts. I call it Team Chesed, and I have a lot of ideas about writing a book. But I also want to kind of do some exploration, and so I would never like use your name. I would never even share your story without your permission. But I just want to be transparent that that is something that I am thinking about. Um, so I'm going to just pause here for a second, see if there are any sort of comments and questions about what we're doing. We'll still do the breakout groups as we have been. Yeah, so any comments or questions? Yeah, Paul.
Your definition of says not expecting anything in return.
Yeah.
But when you do a return, and sometimes it's
Paul, you're
expected and
breaking up
sometimes
just a
it's
little
unexpected.
bit. We're having a little hard to, we're catching, we're missing, some words are dropping out.
Sometimes that thanks or the pleasure you get from doing it is expected and sometimes not expected. But it's like a fringe benefit of doing good
Yeah.
is you feel good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, as I've thought about it and I've learned that it's okay if we feel good, but we don't want to be motivated by that feeling. You know, that's kind of the fringe benefit. And, you know, because then we can end up sort of chasing reactions and feelings, and that can lead to sort of traps along the way. But that's a good segue because I have some other definitions of chesed here. So some of these we've already kind of covered. You know, leaving the path of least resistance. You know, if you just walk through the door and not hold it for someone, that's the path of least resistance. You know, if we stop a moment and hold the door, that's off the path. We talked about, as Paul just mentioned, not expecting anything in return. And then there is love for someone to unmute and to read this bottom quote, please. Maybe we could spend a couple minutes on that.
One who gives a coin to a poor man is blessed with 6 blessings, and one who comforts the poor man with words is blessed with 13 blessings. Baba Batra 9a.
Thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing and then I'll put that in the chat. I apologize for not converting this to gender neutral language. I often don't remember to do that, but I will try to do better. So what is this teaching us? What's going on here? Who is Yes, Joanne.
So, I think, you know, giving a coin to a beggar or, you know, someone who looks very, you know, basically begging,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't engage them in their humanity. And I guess speaking to someone, meeting their eyes, there's a human interaction going on.
Mhm.
And that's more significant, I think,
Yeah,
sometimes even than the coin, you know?
absolutely. Absolutely. I had to pick up a prescription the other day, and outside there are a number of men who I'd noticed them there. They sort of come in the morning, they're day laborers, they speak in Spanish to each other, and I kind of had to walk through the group. And so I walked in, I didn't say anything, but I walked out, I just looked at them, I said, Buenos dias, which is probably half of the Spanish that I know, which means, good day or good morning. And boy, I swear they all just lit up with smiles and said Buenos dias back. And so I really love what you said, Joanne, about just like having that human connection with people, being important. Harry, nice to see you.
Yeah, nice seeing you too. Well, in simple terms, the coin is a transaction. The words are a relationship.
Mm,
It's as simple as that.
yeah,
And the value is obviously in the relationship and not in the transaction.
yeah. Absolutely, and that's kind of the essence of Chesed is being relational. That's really really key. So thank you for highlighting that, Wendy.
Well, I was just in the echo chamber with Harry. I just thought when you give a coin, you give what you have. When you give words, you give who you are.
Mm, yeah, love that. Yeah, we're kind of giving of ourselves when we do that. Harry, did you want to add something else? No, okay. Saw your hand go up and down. All right, so let's take this a little bit further. Oh, Paul, yes.
I just want to say that the giving of the coin is also chesed. Okay, because you're giving the guy the possibility of physical sustenance.
Mm-hmm.
And perhaps what's greater is to comfort them, to see them as a human being, which is spiritual sustenance.
Yeah.
But both are chesed. And I don't know how you value, the which is which is better than the other. I mean, they both are appropriate at various times.
Yeah, absolutely. And from this teaching, one who gives a coin is getting 6 blessings. So that's nothing to sneeze at. It is an act of chesed to do that, and it is important. So yeah, thank you. Okay. So let's talk about chesed as a divine attribute. So this is a selection from the book of Exodus. And to remind you of the context, it is after the sin of the golden calf. And people are apologizing. And Moses says to God, let me see your face so I can know you. And God says, I'm sorry, you can't see my face. You would die, but I'll let you see my back. So go hide in this crevice and I'll pass by and you'll be able to see my back. And so then this is what happens when the divine is sort of passing by the cracks. So would someone like to unmute and read this?
And the divine passed before Moses and proclaimed, Divine, divine, benevolent one, who is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger and abundant in chesed and truth, sustaining chesed to the 1,000th generation, forgiving iniquity and rebellion and sin, but not absolving completely without consequences, calling to account the iniquity of the fathers upon the sons, and upon sons' sons to the third and fourth generation. Exodus 34, 6 to 7.
Thank you, Joanne. I'll pause you here for a minute. And I have to say, like, one thing that troubled me about this for a long time was this idea that, like, wow, that's pretty harsh that you are, you know, bringing consequences against someone's children or grandchildren. And so this, I was looking at the Everett Fox translation, which
Mhm.
has this calling to account the iniquity, which I liked that. The above was a different translation, some of which was mine.
Mhm.
So, and he cites this thing from Clement. So, Joanne, could you just read that second bullet as well, please?
Mhm. This may mean an entire household, that is, generally the largest number of generations alive at one time.
Yeah, thank
Clemens.
you.
Mhm.
So, this was, you know, at a time, and we're getting back to these times where you get multiple generations living under one roof, but that was really kind of the lifestyle. And so I think that has a really different valence than, you know, 50 years from now, your grandchildren are still going to be paying for this, as opposed to, you know, if I'm the head of a household and I do something really bad, it could impact everybody. You know, if I end up going to jail, it does impact my children. And if my grandchildren or great grandchildren were all living under my roof, it would impact the whole family. So I think that was interesting. But I'm going to stop the share here and then I'm going to copy this into the chat because these divine attributes are really key. I think they're really critical for Mussar practice. That's my perspective. You may or may not agree. But first, let's understand, like, what's going on here. What does it mean when we're talking about divine attributes? Paul.
First of all, I want to say that the Peshat, the literal reading of the generations, was very disturbing to the rabbis of the Talmud. And they try to mitigate it and lessen its severity by, well, just by reinterpreting it in a different way. Because they didn't feel that that was just and that God needs to be just. But with regard to the 13 attributes, imitatio Dei, we're supposed to imitate God. And if God is just, so should we be just. And what's interesting is the Chesed is mentioned twice in that description.
Yeah.
Notes Chesed Lalafim and another time. And
Yeah.
so that is given primacy over all these other attributes.
Mm-hmm.
And when
Yeah.
we say we want to walk in God's ways, this is exactly what the rabbis mean by that. As God has attributes, so should we have the same attributes.
Yeah. Yeah, very well said, Paul. Thank you. Great explanation of what this is. So other thoughts is that, I mean, we may all have different feelings about the divinity. This may not be a comfortable topic, but it's a way of kind of almost sort of setting the bar or setting an example. Is that something you're comfortable with? Does this have meaning or resonance with you? No right or wrong answers. Yes, Joanne.
So, I think what Paul was referring to also is, that the rabbis had said, you're going to be influenced by the behavior of your parents, your grandparents,
Mm-hmm.
especially if you're living in the same household,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's not, so harsh. It's reality, and it's hard to make a break from that
Mm-hmm.
and find a better path if theirs is not such a great path.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm going to share another example, another short writing about Chesed, and then we're going to start gearing up for getting into our breakout rooms. I really liked this reading from Rabbi Michelle Perlman and Rabbi Sharon Mars. I may have a volunteer to unmute and read, maybe someone we haven't heard from yet today.
The Genesis story depicts God creating the world with a great act of chesed. Out of the void, we were gifted. Out of the void, we were gifted a world filled with light and all kinds of creatures. We were created in God's image and see God clothing Adam and Eve. The Talmud says, just as God clothes the naked, so should we clothe the naked. Forged from Chesed, we follow the divine's example here on earth, creating our own relationships and new worlds with acts of Chesed. Rabbi Michelle Perlman and Rabbi Sharon Mars, the Mussar Torah commentary.
Thank you so much, Marianne. So what are the points that these rabbis are making here? And I'll copy this into the chat as well. Yeah, Paul.
I don't want to monopolize, but what's really interesting is in the beginning of creation, God clothes the naked, and at the end of the Torah, God buries Moses, and that's another form of chesed with no expectation of thanks. Is that comforting the mourner and burying the dead. So the Torah begins and ends with acts of chesed. And I think that we learn a lot from that. And everything else in between is sort of commentary on that.
Thank you, Paul. Fantastic. It's probably Frank, although it might be Linda.
So, can I be heard? Okay.
Yes.
One of the things I'm more and more aware of as I age is that I cannot be responsible for others. I can only be responsible for myself. And therefore, being kind and compassionate to myself, I need to also be kind and compassionate to others. And I try to kind of do that, and in an imperfect way. Just like I see a lot of strife out in the world, I want to contribute rather than strive with more understanding. And so I feel that that's the way I read that dictum.
Yeah, I love that. And it's sort of, I was quite taken by what they said about, creating new worlds with our relationships and how we view ourselves. We create the world we live in, what we prioritize, what we strive for, how we try to show up. All of that is kind of part of world creation. Joanne.
Yeah, just in the same vein, the other examples in the Torah, God, he visits Abraham, who just circumcised himself at the age of 100, and was in a lot of pain. So he visited the sick and fed the Israelites manna in the desert and provided water for them. And so feeding the hungry. And I have on my phone comforting the bereaved also, because we visit people when they're, sitting shiva.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of things built into our religion to follow,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing.
Absolutely. And all very relational examples as well. Okay, Paul and then Wendy, and then we're going to get ready for our breakout groups. So we don't have to go a full speed round yet, but we probably a good time to be crisp.
The answer to this might be very simple, but something is confusing me about the section we just read, because in how I was informed as going to Sunday school for being raised as a Methodist when I was young, the reading that I got was that it was only after Adam and Eve had bit the apple and from the tree of knowledge, and then they felt ashamed, and that's when they clothed themselves. So it wasn't presented as a gift from God. It was presented as a realization that, oh my God, we're naked. So maybe you could just clarify that for me in terms of how that's being interpreted in Judaism differently, or
Yeah, I mean, I think chronologically the order is the same, but I think God kind of points them to the clothing and helps provide that for them.
okay.
Can I speak? So
Please.
yeah, so what it actually says in Genesis in Hebrew, and I've read the English translation, is they suddenly, after they ate the apple, they suddenly realized they were naked, so they put on fig leaves, and I don't know, God confronts them in the garden, and he said, "Who told you you were naked? Did you eat from that tree?" And the man says, "Well, my wife gave it to me," passing the buck. But then it says God clothed them in animal skin. So he actually did, according to the story, clothed them. Fig leaf was not going to do it. Exactly.
Thank you, Joanne. Thank you for that clarification. So there you have it. Okay. Was there someone else? Well, hey, Janet.
Yeah, one of the big differences between the Christian interpretation of that story and the Jewish interpretation, it is not regarded, we do not talk about the sin of Adam. In fact, the first use of the word sin comes later with Cain and Abel, but yet there is still a message there. Of if we can use the metaphor of clothing the naked. Yes, Adam and Eve disobeyed God, but we can look at it metaphorically. It's not about sin.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So one of the things we like to do is to look at the spectrum for each soul trait. And so to kind of preview where we're going with the breakout rooms, I wanted to just talk about these extremes. So the idea is that, certainly for a mantra, the suggestion is sustain others without the thought of reward, even if they don't deserve it. We're not going to talk about that today, maybe next week. But kind of looking at the spectrum, kind of where do we fit on this balance? And so if we tend to have too little loving kindness, that can lead to selfishness or selfish behavior, not noticing other people, not having that sensitivity. But too much can be jumping in when we're not wanted, and which just comes under the excessive doting, and also the lack of self-care, not setting up boundaries and looking at what we need. So my question, and maybe this is a simple question, but as we're talking about maybe starting to expand what our knowledge of Chesed is, going beyond the minimum to support another, what are some of the other consequences of being out of balance that you've seen in your own life? Yeah, it could be a selfish type behavior. It could be excessive doting or lack of self-care, but I'd love to kind of hear, what other words you might use. So I'm going to stop the share. Yes, Wendy.
Sorry about that. Well, I think that it could lead to jealousy because, well, I mean, suppose that
Let me just pause you because this is for the breakout discussion.
Oh, I thought you were asking a question. Sorry.
Yeah, so that's the question. No, it's a good answer. I'm glad you've given us all food for thought. I put it in the chat, and so right now what I'm going to do is set up the breakout rooms, and as a reminder to all of us, this will be a chance where we want to have everyone share. There's no recordings. We want to keep whatever is shared confidential. And also we want to listen, without judgment. We're not here to kind of fix or advise one another. It's really we're on a journey together and see where it takes us. Okay. So the rooms are open. I will send out a note. We'll probably have like 6, 7 minutes, something like that. Hello, everyone. Welcome back. There's a lot of background noise. Okay, that seems to have gone away. So I'm sorry we're a little bit squeezed. I know we like to have more time together in the breakout room. So kind of got a little caught up today. So just a couple of minutes. Would anyone care to share? We're definitely in speed round time here. Just an insight or something maybe that came up, or I would love to kind of hear some of the words that you can also put them in the chat. Additional words that you came up with. Yeah, Frank.
Linda this time.
Linda, okay.
Nice.
Woo.
The last thing that was said was acting from a better version of ourselves.
Mhm.
And I resonated with that. Not that I necessarily can do it all the time, but it's just a reminder.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you. Who else? Yes, Bonnie.
So Toby and I Toby came up with this very interesting word, self-absorbed, which they're not necessarily that these people are narcissists, but they're self-absorbed. Their circle isn't going to expand. And it could be a family member or a friend, but this is their circle. And you could pound on that wall and you're not going to get in. So I love that term, Toby. You did a great term, self-absorbed.
The circle of we has one person in it.
Or it has a circle with, may have spouse and children and grandchildren, but it is it.
Right. Shelley, did I see your hand? Yes.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I believe everything is about balance. We have good, we have bad, and in any situation, it's one's responsibility to yourself and to others to one, put yourself into other people's position, and also to recognize yourself. So that's really truly being Hesed to them and to yourself, because you're realizing that you might have a perspective, but they also have a perspective. and you're honoring both. You might be saying, well, I might not agree with what you're doing, but that doesn't mean I don't love you, right? We can walk away from this. And so, like I was saying, it's really truly about being mindful about how you react. And for me, I am that person that I've been training myself to, when something negative does occur in my life, to, instead of start focusing on the negative, I start going, well, yeah, that did happen, but at least this didn't happen. And and maybe that this action is going to cause this action, and I'll turn it around to positive, to make someone realize that we all have good, bad things happen to us, but it's to find the balance. And I think it's the same thing with Hesed. When we give too much, we don't give to ourselves, and you have to learn that balance, and to say, okay, I am deserving as much as they're deserving. And I think, as children, we've been taught, and into our adults, that it's easier to give to people than it is to give to ourselves. Receiving, I think, is one of the hardest things for people to go through with any loving kindness attribute. And once you start recognizing that, that maybe that you don't even need the receiving anymore because you're able to give it to yourself, that's the most important thing. That's, with truly being mindfulness, and being able to love everybody, and being able to see the light in everybody, and realize that we're all spirit. We all come from source, in God, whatever you want to call it, but we all have that spark within us, and to recognize that spark. So that's my little blurb.
Thank you so much, Shelley. We'll give you the last word today. We're going to do a closing meditation. I'm going to put also in the chat just the list of actions. These are from the back of the chapter, but just we'll take a moment of silence. We'll begin just by reading those. I'll read these out loud. You can close your eyes. We'll see what it inspires you, what action that you can take in the following week. So close your eyes and take in a deep and leisurely breath and a slow exhale. So we can say yes to help. We can do more than our share. We can love our work a little bit less. We can forgive someone out of Chesed, even if you think they are at fault and they should be the ones to make the first move. We can visit or call someone who is sick. We can call someone in grief. We can make eye contact with someone who maybe looks alone. Now just open your mind and see what comes to you. How you'll focus on practicing Chesed in the next week. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes.